A powerful set of tools that we have are a network analysis tool. Network analysis allows us to calculate drive time calculations. We've looked at select by locations, we've looked at buffer operations, where essentially we're creating circles around particular points. Now this is typically going to be planimetric or Euclidean distance, which really isn't practical in the real world since we need to hop onto a road and drive there, and there's going to be different impedances or drive times and stops attached to each of these roads. I'm going to do a short introduction and highlight some of the different network analysis tools that we have at our fingertips through ArcGIS Pro. If you look at the application here, I've got sources and destinations. These large red dots here, these are farmers markets throughout Durham County, and these other smaller purple dots are block group centroids. And so what we're trying to do is figure out the best route or different ways that we can calculate routes or drive times from these particular small points to these large points throughout Durham County. When I go to analysis and network analysis, I have a number of different options here. We're just going to look at a couple here. We're going to look at service area, we're going to look at routes, closest facilities, and origin-destination matrix within this short video. In addition, we can set a network data source. Now my network data source is going to be arcgis.com. I've signed in using my NCCU username and password, but I can also generate a network data set if I have existing data. There's some trade-offs to each of these. Using my NCCU username and password, I use up credits or money in order for me to do this. So if I'm going to run this network analysis, I only want to do it once, so I want to make sure I have it correct or with as few points as possible, because these credits go by really quickly when we're using this utilizing the network analysis tools. Setting up the network data set is pretty easy, but there's a lot of things you need to do beforehand, but it can be repeated over and over and it doesn't cost you anything. Like some of the geocoding applications that we've talked about in the past, where we've created our own geocoders and we utilize our own geocoders in order to do this. So first thing I'm going to create, and this is fairly easy to create, it's called the service area. And essentially we're going to create drive time polygons because we've looked at the North Carolina sex offender website where we look at 1 mile, 3 mile, 5 miles, and essentially they're just concentric circles around the location that you've typed in, which isn't practical. So we're going to type in service area. The GUIs and the tutorials for these and the tools for this are all very easy to use. And so when we create this, we create a service area 3 right here, and then I'm going to click on service area, and all I need to do, these are the options that I have. And so I can import facilities. What I'm going to do is I'm going to calculate the drive time around all of my farmers markets in Durham County. And so it gives me the option just to click on facilities. It doesn't ask me for anything else. So my facilities it's going to ask for are my farmers markets. It's going to ask me for drive time as opposed to other things like drive distance, truck distance, walk time, or any of these other things. I can look for overlaps or dissolves with my polygons. I like to do dissolves. And then my cutoffs. And so we can look at different cutoffs. We could have 5, 10, 15, 20, 25-minute cutoffs. It's just going to be the number of polygons that it's going to create. I'm going to type in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20. So I'm going to have each polygon is going to be 2-minute, essentially 2-minute intervals of the drive time. It looks like I have everything I need to do. I can create features if I needed to, if I wanted to add another feature here, but what we're going to do is fairly simple here, and I'm going to run this. The main thing when we run this is just interpreting the results. And this is just a very small application that we're looking at. And then you can see our drive time. I'm going to change the polygons a little bit so we can get a little bit more granularity here. But you can see my facilities that I had where we're driving from. I'm going to change my symbology. And I'm actually going to give it a color scheme that I don't like giving it in typically, but I just wanted to highlight these differences here. And so when I zoomed in enough, this brown here is within 0 to 2 minutes, 2 to 4 minutes. This pink is 4 to 6 minutes. And I can right mouse click, open up my attribute table, and you can see the 10 different polygons that were created. And so that we can see all the different polygons that were that were selected from this analysis. And you notice they're concentric, but they're not as concentric as what we had with our buffer analysis or concentric buffers. And so you can see everything right here that I've highlighted in blue is going to be 10 to 12 minutes. It's going to extend further along roads where there's higher speed limits. And so this is a great application. Me personally, what I like to do is I'll right mouse click, and then I'll export these features and do my own individual analysis, even though it can be done within these. So this is a great example of my service area. I'm just going to remove this again. And so once again, I have another one here. I'm going to create a route. Find the shortest path between stops. Well, let's do an example. Say I wanted to visit all of my farmers markets on a particular Saturday morning. What would be the best route for me to drive? I'm going to check this. And once again, I'm going to click on route. I'm going to import the stops. These stops are going to be the Durham Farmers Market. I'm going to click apply. And while it's loading here, you can see up in the top, I want to use drive time. I can also show my directions too. That'll be kind of interesting. And so you can see the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 different stops that we have that we're going to do. I'm going to run this. And I can toggle back and forth between the directions and contents. And you can see from Route 6 to location 6 to location 1, it has everything that we're going to do here. It tells me it's going to be 50 minutes. We're going to travel 25 miles. That's the shortest distance between location 1 and location 6. When I go back to my contents, it should have just a single route right here. And it's got 6 different stops here. You can see my total travel time, my total kilometers right here. It's 39.7. I can change my parameters to set that to miles as well. There's a lot of different parameters that I can set. So once again, you can see I've minimized drive time going between point 1 and point 6. And then you can see I've highlighted the directions that I've utilized for this. So once again, I'm going to remove this. Another type of tool that I have is the closest facility. So now I'm at these different locations here, and I have sources and then I have destinations. So I want to see, I'm at this point right here, I want to see which farmer's market is closest to me. So I'm going to look for closest facility, and I want to make sure that I highlight it's using the drive time as the parameter. So once again, I'm going to create a new analysis layer, and then I can just import my source locations, destination locations into these. And so when I click on my closest facility tab, I've got the facilities that I want to travel to. I can go to my drop down since they're already added to my map. I'm just going to click on my farmers market, and I can add to these. I can look at field names. I can do a lot of different advanced processing with this. The incidents where I'm going from, or sources, are called my incidents. So I'm going to be traveling from the block groups. You see those will be highlighted in the squares. I'm going to be looking at drive times. I can show directions if I want to. It's going to get really ugly really quickly. As you can imagine, I've got about 145 or so different incidents going to 6 different locations. So the processing will get a little bit ugly here. Once again, I'm going to run this. And I'll give it a minute. Okay, here it is. And so what it generates here, and I'll kind of unclick these here, are a number of different routes. And there should be 145 different routes right here. And so when I go from location 50, it saw that this location 50 all the way up in the northern part of the county, the closest one is going to be over here directly north of it instead of the one over here or instead of the one over here. And I can see that it's going to take me about 23 minutes and about 23 kilometers to travel there. So if I zoomed in enough right here, I could see the different, you can see this one right here, there's literally only about 2 sources or 2 incidents that are closest to this, even though when we look at them they might be further away, but we can see the train tracks in downtown Durham. There's not a lot of crossings in downtown Durham, so you have to kind of go around there. But you can see all of the locations that are closest to a particular farmer's market in this particular case here. And so you can kind of see these drive sheds. Now the interesting thing with these, we've got this location 50 right here that's attached to this, and we can go and parse these out so we can have a from and a to. You'll notice when we go to location 6, there's only 6 possible locations, and then each of these are going to be attached to these. But with our facilities, if we right mouse click and open these up, it's got a location 1, it's got a source ID, it's got an object ID, so we can start to map these individual points in terms of drive time, or attach these points using a object ID with my routes as well as my location numbers. And so I can do a little bit more advanced Python programming applications, kind of circle back and attach these to each of these particular points here as well. But you can see the routes, and we can map these routes at the line level, okay, making graduated symbols, or we can, like I said before, we can kind of group those back to the individual incidents from which we started and map those, or we can group those by zip codes or whatever we want to do there. So that's another thing called closest facility. The last one we're going to look at under analysis is called an OD matrix, okay, origin-destination matrix. This kind of gets really ugly really quickly. But I want to calculate all the possible drive times from this point to all the other farmers markets to see how accessible or available or whatever the term is that we want to use to everything in the county. And keep in mind here, there might be other farmers markets outside. I didn't want to get too ugly with the analysis. And so here, I'm going to look at my origins and my destinations. So where are people going from? Where are people going to? So my origins, people are going to go from these block groups. Destinations, we're traveling to the farmers markets. And once again, you can see I've got drive time as my input parameter. I'm just going to draw the straight lines here. You'll see we're going to make this what we call the spider web diagram here. I'm going to run this. Might take a minute or so to run, but this is an incredibly powerful tool. And so what we're trying to do here is calculate from every destination how far it is. So when I kind of zoom into this location all the way in the northern part of the county, you can see it calculates the drive time to each of the six different farmers markets or destinations that we have here. And so I can click on this right here, and then the attribute information will pop up, and it'll tell us it's 34 minutes, about 35 kilometers. And so this spider web diagram truly isn't, we call a spider web diagram, but it's just highlighting the points right here are a visual of where we're looking at, even though they're going to be driving along the roads. And so once again, when we look at these lines, we can see there's 870, that's 145 times 6. And so we can go our origin from, our destination to, and then we can see the total drive time to each of these. So we can start to maybe group these or run some sort of summarize for this particular location here. So from this origin, we can see it on average. We can run some averages or summaries with these to figure out the most available or least available of our origins going towards our particular destinations. This is just a really quick preview using 6 destinations, 145 origins taken from block group centroids. And so as you can imagine, there's some other things here like vehicle routing problems, location allocation, and you can get really more robust with the service area routes, closest facilities, and origin destination matrices that we've talked about already. But these are great tools to model what we're going to be dealing in the rural world, where that buffers and select by locations aren't able to do for us.